Ever wished you could party with Leo DiCaprio? Well, today's deep dive is about a guy who did, and it's wilder than any movie.
Wilder than Wolf of Wall Street, that's saying something.
Yeah, well, get this. He actually financed the movie The Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh, wow. Okay, you got my attention. Lay it on me.
We're uncovering the story of Joe Low, the mastermind behind one of the biggest financial heists in history.
Joe Low. Okay, so where do we even begin with a story like that?
From the beginning, of course.
That sense.
We're pulling from this YouTube video called The Man Who Robbed an Entire Country on the Magnates Media channel.
I've seen that one. It's wild.
It is.
So Joe Low, modest beginnings on the Malaysian island of Penang, but ends up infiltrating the highest circles of wealth and power, right?
Exactly.
Crazy.
The video talks about how his parents send him to this prestigious Harrow boarding school in England when he's only 16.
Harrow. So he's surrounded by royalty and oil money, basically.
Yeah, classmates from royal families and oil dynasties. It's like he got dropped right into a real-life episode of Crazy Rich Asians.
Except maybe a little darker.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So that's where this ambition takes root. Seeing all that wealth up close.
It seems that way. It's almost like he was studying them.
Study?
Yeah, like studying the social dynamics of the elite, learning how to crack the code of their world.
Fascinating.
But instead of hitting the books, he decides to play the game.
What, like literally sport enough?
No, like he plays their game, the game of wealth and status.
Got it.
There's this crazy story about how Lowe borrows a 160-foot yacht from a family friend,
Okay.
replaces all the family photos with pictures of himself.
Hold on. What?
Yep, and then passes the yacht off as his own to impress his classmates.
He basically staged a yacht photo shoot.
Basically, yeah.
Wow, that's commitment.
But it worked. He understood that perception often matters more than reality, especially in those circles.
Right, so it wasn't just about showing off. He was signaling that he belonged, that he was one of them.
Exactly. He was hacking the system, essentially.
Clever, but I mean, how far can you really get with just a fake yacht?
Oh, this is just the beginning.
Oh, there's more.
He even forged a letter on Brunei embassy letterhead to get a VIP table at this famous London nightclub.
So he and his friends could party with celebrities.
Underage friends, I should add.
Bold move. Risky, too.
It does speak to a certain level of audacity.
And confidence, I guess. You gotta admire the hustle, kinda.
And this pattern continues when he goes to Wharton for college.
He keeps up the charade.
Oh, yeah. The video even says he plagiarized finance articles and spread rumors about being a Malaysian prince.
All to solidify his image? Wow, that's elaborate.
It's mind-boggling that he managed to pull it off for so long.
I know, right? And to think, this is just the origin story?
This is just the tip of the iceberg. The real scheme, it all begins when Low sets his sights on Malaysia's political landscape.
This is where Najib Razak edges the picture.
Right. He later becomes the Prime Minister of Malaysia.
And Low, he realizes that political influence is the key to unlocking even greater wealth and power, right?
You got it. And he has this knack for making himself indispensable.
So how does he approach Najib? Like, hey, let's make a deal. I'm glad it was that simple.
Oh, no. Low's much more subtle, much more strategic. He starts throwing these lavish parties, attracting high-profile individuals.
I've heard about these parties.
And always making sure to include Riza Aziz, Najib's stepson.
Ah, so he's using the parties to get close to Najib.
Precisely. By positioning himself as this social connector, someone who could grant access to these exclusive events, he makes himself valuable to Najib's inner circle.
Smart.
But here's the thing, he's spending lavishly while trying to appear wealthy.
Doesn't quite add up, does it?
Exactly. So behind the scenes, he's negotiating discounts, delaying payments.
Wow. Master manipulator.
Absolutely.
Okay, so he's got the connections, the image, and now he's tight with the future Prime Minister of Malaysia.
Yep. This is where things get really interesting.
Do tell.
Najib becomes Prime Minister, and Low proposes this seemingly brilliant idea, the creation of a sovereign wealth fund called 1MDB.
A sovereign wealth fund. Sounds pretty official.
On the surface, it was this fantastic initiative promising economic development and prosperity for Malaysia.
Sounds too good to be true.
And it was. Low even manages to broker a deal for Middle Eastern investors to fund a major construction project, allows Najib to take credit, boosts his popularity.
A win-win, right? Except not really.
Not really. Low's true intention was to use the fund as his personal piggy bank.
Classic case of using a legitimate-sounding venture to mask a criminal enterprise.
You got it.
But how does he convince the Prime Minister to go along with this?
Remember, by this point, Low's carefully cultivated this image as a successful deal-maker. He's earned Najib's trust.
Right.
And he plays on Najib's ambition, suggesting they can use the fund to solidify his power and influence.
A potent mix of greed and ambition, for sure.
Absolutely. And so you have this sovereign wealth fund brimming with cash, and Joe Low's basically pulling the strings.
This is where his understanding of international finance really comes into play, right?
This is where the heist begins.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat here. How does he actually start siphoning the money off?
Oh, that's a story for another time.
You can't leave me hanging like that.
Stay tuned, you won't want to miss it. Okay, so last time we left off with Jho Low essentially in control of this massive sovereign wealth fund, 1MDB.
Yeah, billions of dollars just right for the taking.
And now we're going to get into the how.
The how.
How he actually starts siphoning the money off.
This is where his understanding of, well, his understanding of the global financial system really comes in handy.
And its weaknesses.
Right, and all its little loopholes.
Exactly. So he starts with this joint venture.
The joint venture.
With a Saudi oil company called Petro-Saudi.
Petro-Saudi, okay.
On paper, it looks like a legitimate investment.
Right, Malaysia puts in $1 billion hoping for a good return.
But,
there's a but.
Big but, while Najib authorizes the investment, Low secretly diverts $700 million of that money.
$700 million, wow.
To a shell company that he controls.
Classic move.
And he uses something called bearer shares to do it.
Bearer shares. So, like, whoever physically holds the share certificate is the owner, no questions asked?
Exactly. Financial anonymity on steroids.
Perfect for hiding stolen money.
Right. And this Petro-Saudi deal, it's just the beginning.
Oh, it gets worse.
Oh, yeah. Low, he knew he needed to make 1MDB appear successful to keep the money flowing.
Right. Got to keep up appearances.
So that's where Goldman Sachs comes in.
Goldman Sachs. The big investment bank.
The one and only.
Interesting.
He targets Tim Leissner, a high-ranking executive at Goldman, basically showers him with lavish gifts, introductions to powerful people.
I'm sensing a pattern here.
And he convinces Goldman to issue bonds for 1MDB.
Bonds. So they're basically lending money to 1MDB, right?
Right. And they promise investors that the money will be used to fund power plants and development projects in Malaysia.
Sounds pretty good. On paper?
Investors are eager to jump on board because, hey, it's Goldman Sachs backing this.
Makes sense.
But
always a back.
1MDB didn't have a credit rating.
So it was risky to lend them money.
Very risky. So to make the bonds more appealing, Goldman uses its reputation to pair 1MDB with Abu Dhabi's sovereign wealth fund.
Abu Dhabi. Okay. Lots of money, excellent credit.
Exactly. So suddenly, the deal seems much less risky.
So they were basically using Abu Dhabi's good name to cover up 1MDB's shady dealings.
You got it. And it works. 2012, 1MDB issues $3.5 billion in bonds through Goldman Sachs.
$3.5 billion.
But Low, using his offshore shell companies, diverts $1.4 billion of that money into an account he controls.
Just like that.
Just like that.
And he pulls up the same trick again in 2013?
Raises another $3 billion, big chunk, ends up in his pocket. This guy's playing financial three-card Monte on a global scale.
Incredible, really.
And then to make it even harder to trace, he uses a layering scheme.
Layering scheme, like what's that?
Imagine taking a $1,000 bill and breaking it down into hundreds, then tens, then ones, spreading them across different banks and accounts.
Ah, so it's much harder to trace the original source.
Exactly. He moved the money through this complex web of offshore accounts. Nearly impossible to follow the trail.
That's pretty impressive.
And on top of all of that, he's setting up fake companies with names that sound like legitimate firms, like BlackRock.
To throw everyone off his scent?
Yep, this guy's not just audacious, he's meticulous.
And let's not forget about the bribes.
Oh, right. He was reportedly paying off key individuals at Goldman elsewhere.
To ensure they're complicit.
And they're silent.
Smart, but also just, wow.
It was a well-oiled machine of deception, really.
Fueled by greed and a total disregard for the law. So we've got stolen billions, shell companies, fake firms, a web of bribes. What happens next? Does he just, like, kick back and relax?
Not exactly. He decides to make a splash. And I mean a huge splash on the international party scene.
This is where DiCaprio and all those celebrities come in, right?
This is where things get really wild.
All right, I am ready for this.
Okay, so the parties. We're talking DiCaprio, Kim Kardashian, Paris Hilton, the whole A-list crowd. Sounds like something straight out of, like, The Great Gatsby, but, you know, with a modern horse.
And a lot more money, I'd imagine.
Oh, yeah, way more money. But what was the strategy here? Was it just Jho Low having a good time?
I doubt it. Remember, this guy was obsessed with image, with perception. So these parties, they were basically elaborate marketing campaigns.
On himself.
For himself, he wanted to be seen as this, like, ultimate power broker, the guy who could bring together celebrities, politicians, business moguls, everyone who's anyone.
So he's creating his own exclusive club, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone wants in. He understood that by surrounding himself with all these famous and influential people, it would enhance his own image, you know.
Make him more desirable to those seeking connections.
Exactly.
And he wasn't afraid to spend to make it happen.
Oh, no, not at all.
I mean, we're talking millions of dollars on these parties.
It is easy.
Hundreds of thousands just to get celebrities to attend.
Private jets, luxury yachts, champagne flowing like Well, water.
And it wasn't just the guest list.
No.
The entertainment was over the top, too. There was this one birthday bash in Vegas.
Oh, yeah?
Kanye West, Bradley Cooper. And get this, Britney Spears emerges from a giant birthday cake.
What? Come
I
on.
know, right? Pure
A
spectacle.
line to, like, awe and intimidate.
Exactly. And it worked. These parties became legendary, attracting the world's elite, solidifying Lowe's image as someone with, well, limitless wealth and influence.
But it couldn't last forever, right?
It couldn't. All good things must come to an end. And in 2015, the cracks start to show.
What happens?
A whistleblower leaks a bunch of incriminating emails
To the press.
to the press. And these emails, they expose the whole thing.
The extent of the 1MDB fraud.
All of it.
Wow.
Public outrage in Malaysia reaches a boiling point. Massive protests demanding Najib's resignation.
What about Lowe? What does he do?
He vanishes.
Vanishes.
Gone. Poof. Into thin air.
Seriously. Just like that.
Just like that, he went into hiding, reportedly in China, under the protection of some powerful allies.
So he gets away with it.
He's still a fugitive to this day. No one knows for sure where he is.
Unbelievable.
But while Lowe may have escaped justice, so far at least the fallout for those involved was significant.
Yeah, what happened with Najib and Goldman Sachs?
Najib ends up losing the election in 2018.
First regime change in Malaysia's history, wasn't it?
It was, and then he was arrested, convicted on multiple charges related to the scandal.
Wow.
Sentenced to 12 years in prison.
No getting out of that one.
And Goldman Sachs, they managed to negotiate a multi-billion-dollar settlement with the U.S. government. Admitted wrongdoing.
But their reputation took a hit, I bet.
Major hit. The whole scandal really exposed the dangers of unchecked greed and the lengths to which powerful institutions will go to protect themselves.
It makes you think, doesn't it, about how easily these things can happen.
It does, but it also shows that even the most sophisticated schemes can be exposed, and that accountability, even if it's delayed, can prevail.
Yeah, that's true. I guess Lowe's story raises questions about the allure of wealth and status, how easily those ethical boundaries can get blurred.
Definitely, it's a cautionary tale about ambition, about greed, about the systems that allow these things to happen.
It's a wild story, really. International intrigue, financial schemes, those crazy parties, and then a fugitive who just disappears.
Truth is stranger than fiction, right?
Sometimes.
Well, that was quite a deep dive into the world of Joe Lowe and the 1MDB scandal.
Yeah, it was. A lot to unpack there.
If you're interested in exploring this story further, check out the Man Who Robbed an Entire Country video on YouTube.
Definitely worth a watch.
Until next time, keep your curiosity sharp and remember, even the most elaborate illusions eventually crumble.